we got a breaking news bulletin that, thinking about it and going back to it, James Edwards knew the entire time we had him on, he just couldn't say anything. And when I asked him about a prediction for a Pistons hire, between today sometime and Sunday, sounded a little weird. And if it's not Kevin Ollie, who's allegedly a front runner, who do you think is? I think it's somebody else they've been real quiet about. He knew the whole time, because later on yesterday, Monty Williams would sign on to coach the Detroit Pistons. He's agreed to, in principle, a record 6-year, $78.5 million deal with incentives. Could be $100 million. We're obviously going to talk a lot about that and try to get that from every angle. But that was it was great, the fact that Shams and James Edwards crediting each other in their tweets, and knowing that we had James on, and thinking back to it and listening back to it, and James knowing the entire time about the story, like, oh, you're going to drop a story later? And
I think we just need to call James back up at like 8:17, be like,
good morning.
Listen, jerk, you had the news.
Good morning, James. How are you? Anything you want to talk about today? That's interesting. Today's a day of celebration, right? Let's not get all negative Nancy here and be all, up in arms over and try to, find things to nitpick at and be upset over. That's just, you're just choosing to be negative at that point. I'm not going to choose to do that. Where was there ever a formal offer that was accepted by Monty, or a former offer that was given to Monty Williams from the Detroit Pistons where he said no? Where was that ever reported?
It was by some random Twitter account.
Some random Twitter account. So not somebody like a Woj or Shams, or the guy we had on the radio yesterday that had the story the entire time, was sitting on it, hatching an egg with us at 8:35 in the morning. James Edwards, you dog, you. So it wasn't anybody credible.
No.
It was just NBA whatever fluff account at whatever on Twitter.
Like B-ball hype or something. I can't remember what's that Twitter account is, but
Hoops hype?
Not hoops hype. I'd have to do some digging, but they have quite a bit of followers, but it's hard to judge, like, is any of this credible, or do you guys just spread a lot of fake stories and get some followers out of it?
Right. So until I see a report where they say, because I feel like we would have talked about that. I feel like we would have said, like, oh, hey, by the way, the Pistons offered Monty Williams and he said no. I'm looking at it like this. 6 years, $78.5 million. The money doesn't matter, folks. The money doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter to you what they pay him. You want to know why? Because it's not your money. And it doesn't count against the salary cap. So what's the difference? Honestly. You get to pay him 6 years and $78.5 million over the 6-year span. It's got incentives. It could go up to $100 million. He's going to be the second highest paid person per year on the Pistons payroll. But he doesn't count against the cap. So why does the money bother you? If they paid him $78.5 million a year, what's the difference?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy, Anthony, sure, but I mean, he signed a quality free agent.
There are none. Jeremy Grant's the only guy out there I would look at. Yesterday it was pitched to me, Harrison Barnes, no. Fred VanVleet, no. Who was the other guy? Victor Oladipo, no. I like Jeremy Grant's the only guy. There's this terrible class. This class is not it.
Fred VanVleet, Karis LeVert, D'Angelo Russell, Gary Trent, Malik Beasley. You got to sign some middle-of-the-road guys, Anthony. We can't have – Corey Joseph was the 10th dude on that Raptors team. That's not what we need.
Fred VanVleet is going to command a high dollar in 11 minutes at the point guard position. So what are you going to do with Cade? That doesn't get you anywhere.
And I understand both of your guys' points, where it's like, hey, let's not throw a lot of money at this middling to low free agent class. And Dan saying, hey, we need to build a team, or else Monty Williams will turn into Dwayne Casey. Monty Williams will turn into Jeff Blashill. Where it's like, hey, like, we'll give you leeway because we're looking at the team that's given to you. And then after all of a sudden, like, 6 years, it's like, okay, like, yeah, we haven't given you much, but you also haven't done much with, you haven't exceeded any expectations. So I'm just hoping that if Gorse is willing to say, hey, I'm going to open my pocketbook for you and show good faith that we're going to do the same for this team. We're going to go at all costs to rebuild this team quicker. And also, Matt Ishbia, if you want to do us more favors, trade us Devin Booker.
Yeah, just release him and let us sign him. So
no,
we don't
just
have
trade
to...
for, we'll give you the number 5 and 3 second-round picks.
Perfect. I'm in.
And Corey Joseph.
This, to me, you finally have an owner that is willing to open up the checkbook to go get a guy. Like, oh, these owners don't spend any money. Chris Ilitch doesn't spend any money. He only builds parking lots. They won't spend any money. Here goes an organization trying to spend some money. I can't believe they'd pay. Like, what is wrong with you people? What are you mad about? 1, it ain't your money. 2, I'm the most money-conscious person out there, but it doesn't affect the cap, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's Tom Gorse's money. What's the difference? Pay him $100 million a season. If he gets the team to 41 wins next year, I'd say that's money well spent. Dwayne Casey's a nice guy. Win some games. I don't care if you're a nice guy anymore. I really don't. I want a savage out there. That's what I want. I want somebody who people play hard for, not like, oh, well, we're getting a little bit. I don't want that. I don't want that. Win some damn games. 17 wins in a season is not good enough. The guy had a worse winning percentage than Matt Patricia. Like, well, he's a really nice guy. I don't care. Go be a jerk.
And if you're upset over the hire, who else did you want?
Thank you. Because I'm upset over the way. I'm glad they hired him, but I'm not happy the way it went down. How do you know how it went down? You weren't there.
Right. Because, really, there was a group of 4 coaches this off-season cycle where if you're a team that had an opening, that you're like, all right, there's Budenhauser, there's Doc Rivers, Monty Williams, Nick Nurse. Those are the proven coaches, and Ime Udoka. Those are the proven guys out on this market. Everything else is kind of a gamble. And with the coaches, those bigger name coaches, we all know their flaws. Like, they have enough of a track record where you know exactly what you're getting when you hire these guys. So it's like either break the bank for one of these big free agent coaches, especially if you're the Pistons. You have to break the bank to lure Monty Williams away from those other openings. Or else you're taking, you're taking the mystery box with an assistant coach. You have no idea what's in there. It could be anything. It could be a boat. You don't know.
Here is where this story gets misconstrued. 2 weeks prior, for Monty Williams, the 2022 NBA Coach of the Year, when he was fired by the Phoenix Suns after the Western Conference Finals semifinals exit, Detroit had checked in with Williams and his representatives to gauge any interest in the coaching vacancy. Now, this is 2 weeks prior to the organization had another meeting. They were getting everybody together, heads of state, right? And they were looking at everybody. They're interviewing everybody. And it's the weekend before Memorial Day. Tom Gorse, Troy Weaver, the front office, they held a meeting. And that is where they went back to this, quote, what if we go back to Monty? Because when he got fired in Phoenix, according to a league source, Detroit immediately picked up the phone, called his agent to gauge interest. Would you like to meet? Monty had informed the Pistons, the Bucks, and other NBA teams that were calling his phone. He wasn't ready to commit to coaching next season, and he was leaning towards taking a year off. The Pistons ever made a formal offer? Okay, that's great. Which goes back to my original point. When was a formal offer made that he turned it down? But if Milwaukee with Giannis Antetokounmpo calls him, and they're like, hey, what are you doing, old Monty? And he's like, I don't know. I'm thinking about taking a year off. Okay. All right. So go back to him. And, hey, Monty, I know you're thinking about taking a year off. We just wanted to meet with you. Here's a number that we have for you. We'll come out to Phoenix. We'll get this, we'll hand out some paperwork. And Br0's actually sent a plane to Phoenix to pick him up and then brought him back to his house. Said, what's it going to take? You really want to take a year off? This is what we have. How's $78.5 million sound? Now, I'll tell you what, I'm not taking a year off.
Also, interesting thing to know, Monty Williams does buy a property here in Metro Detroit of who his mortgage lender will be.
Oh, man. That's talk about a great story there. That could be a 3-part series. But he'll probably pay cash, so he probably doesn't need a lender. You know what I mean? Like, when you have that much money,
right.
You're not, you could probably just stay here, cut the check, get it over with. I mean, this is a home run hire, and it should be a day of celebration. And the first time we talk about it today, we got complaints.
It's not complaints, Anthony. It's the fact that the Suns had Devin Booker averaging 27 points and DeAndre Ayton averaging 19 points, and they were 5 games under 500. And then guess what? They went and got Chris Paul, a top 5 point guard of all time, and they got good. You have to get players too. And I'm not talking washed up guys.
Yeah, look, they go from 34 and 39 during the 2019-2020 campaign, COVID year, to 51 and 21, 64 and 18, 45 and 37.
And we all remember that bubble too. They were hot in the bubble. The TJ Warren run.
Bubble madness. I get that you have to have players, but I've never seen a team win without players.
No, my only hope is that if Tom Br0's is willing to really open up the checkbook for a head coach, that this is a philosophy change in how he's running this organization from here on out. Say, all right, now that I feel like we got a better coach in place, we're going 100% in. Enough of this tanking business, enough of sitting players, enough of 21 seasons. It's all systems go. Like, we've done our time. It's go time now.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's the from the ownership standpoint, outside of the X's and O's, because let's be honest, it's the NBA. Like, everybody's running the same stuff. Everybody knows what everybody runs. Everybody runs the same stuff. When you get a head coach, it's about culture. It's about philosophy. It's about managing personalities. It's about managing minutes, right? And maximizing, squeezing all the juice you can out of guys. Like, that's what it's about. And from what Monty Williams has been through in his life, I kind of feel like, if you have an issue with Monty Williams, that's probably more indicative of you than it is of him. Someone with a lot of perspective. A lot of perspective. And it was a very difficult thing when you go back to his history and see what he has been living with and living through, the amount of loss that he has had in his immediate family. And you look at a guy who's pretty Brazilian. And everywhere he goes, they've been pretty good. He's pretty good with young players. I mean,
don't do that, Anthony. We've been hearing, we heard that about Dwayne Casey. We heard that about SVG. Come on.
When did anybody say Stan Van Gundy was good with young players? Stan Van Gundy is like the complete. He's like Tom Thibodeau. Like, I never heard anybody say Stan Van Gundy's good with young players. He's a screamer. He's exhausting. Same with Tom. Like, that's why Tibbs will be on his way out in New York. There's only so much of that. You can't do 3-hour practices every day. It's not going to work. You're going to lose your guys. And as for Dwayne Casey, like, yeah, another really, like, look, nice guy. People have nothing but positive things to say about how nice he is as a person. That's fine. I need somebody that can take this team to the next level. Is it Monty Williams? We don't know. But we know he's probably the best name on the market. And look, like Nick Nurse, would you rather Monty Williams or Nick Nurse? Or Mike Budenholzer or Monty Williams? Like, those are your three. Ime Udoka, I don't know. Would the Celtics have been better off keeping him? Probably. But, you know, at some point, like, you know, character's got to matter a little bit. Like, for me, it's a celebratory time.